What's up, everybody? Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to let you know about an amazing offer we have at the Coaches site. We are going to provide 10 youth associations, the first 10 that reach out to us, a 45-day free trial on the Coaches site. That means that every coach in your organization is going to get full access to our suite of premium coaching content for 45 days, as long as there's a minimum of 20 coaches. We'll even throw in a usage report at the end so you can evaluate if it's the right fit for your organization, your coaches, and most of all, your players. If you're interested, okay, be one of the first 10 associations to reach out to us by shooting us an email at info@thecoachesite.com and put 45-day free trial in the subject line. Again, that's info@thecoachesite.com and put 45-day free trial in the subject line, and we'll get your association rolling right away. And now, on to the show. How was the weekend?
Grand Prairie's a long trip, especially one-day trip up there. Like to play Saturday night, Sunday morning, and then come back. It's tough, but a win and a tie, can't ask for too much more. So,
based on where your program is today, very much early on in your tenure, how important is it to kind of find those wins inside the wins to just signal, well, the standings might not demonstrate that we're making progress, but finding other evidence that in fact you are?
yeah, that's been a struggle a bit because analytically, like if you look at our last 5 games, we're even on scoring chances, but we're -9 on goals. So the play's coming. We can tell it's coming, but you can only tell the athlete that for so long. So for us to win a tough one in overtime was huge. And then to come back from a couple goals down, go to overtime and almost win it. But to pick up 3 or 4 points is a step in the right direction. And Kim, our producer, and I were talking, and he said, "Oh, it's becoming a team now. Like I can feel it becoming a team." And that's why he got so involved with the basketball side of things, is he loved our team dynamic. And it's starting to go there. But I think as any coach knows, you can only lose so much before it starts to affect the message you're sending out.
Outside of winning and losing, what are maybe some of the other bottlenecks that stop teams from becoming a team?
I think every good team's got to face that adversity point, something that they didn't foresee that's got to glue them together. But what I'm finding on the hockey side is a lot different than my basketball experience. I think one of the major things at this level, being a little bit younger than college athletes, is the individual focus on themselves and their points and getting to the next level. Whereas we're trying to feed them, if you play well together, there's going to be more eyes on you because your team's more successful and you're doing it the right way, instead of being down 4 goals and scoring that useless goal at the end of the third to make it 4-2, right? So I think that's one of the things that I've seen a lot with this age group, and especially U18. I think the emotional variance is very high day to day with these athletes. I didn't anticipate it to be so much. Once again, I'm used to 18 to 25-year-old athletes. So this is a different change.
No kidding. And I want to dissect that a little bit more, but you mentioned your producer. So for anybody that's listening and is not familiar, you were documenting this season.
Yes, that's
In
right.
the same way that I think, a lot of pro sports teams now have an ongoing running show of their season, in some cases the off season as well. How are your players adjusting to having cameras around?
They're awkward around it to start, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Kim came on the first big road trip here this Grand Prairie weekend, and
Yeah.
the boys are starting to get to know him, so they're getting a little more comfortable around the camera. And then on the way home, they're like, "Hey, Kim, can we see all our goals? Can you show us all our goals?"
Of
So
course. Yeah.
he's doing double duty and sending them stuff. So I think at first it was just kind of weird to them. And I had to remind them a lot of times early, "Hey, I'm mic'd up all the time. So whatever you guys say, not only do I hear, but the producer hears in his earphones." And so like this weekend, we scored the overtime goal, and I might have used a curse word in excitement.
Might have got salty.
Yeah. The boys were pretty excited to hear that. They fired up on the bench. So they're coming around to it. I think they don't know what to expect, right? They're out here playing their butts off and trying to get to the next level. Whereas when they did one on our basketball team, the girls got used to it in the first month or so, but they were also getting player mic'd a lot, and the guys haven't got player mic'd yet. So once that happens, I'm interested to hear what's happening on the ice, because this age level, there is a lot of chirping, and it's clean chirping because they're not allowed to really say anything offside, otherwise you're suspended, right? With the new Alberta elite hockey rules, which is great. But some of the chirps are hilarious that they're saying, because it's like it's stuff way back in the 90s. You'd be like, what is that? Is that even a chirp? So I'm looking forward to them being mic'd up for that.
Why document the season?
Yeah, doing this switch over from basketball to hockey, I think is the scariest, most exciting thing that I've ever done. I
Can't
don't
imagine.
know. Yeah, I don't know anyone. It's so far out of my comfort zone, but once again, that's how you grow. I am a coach through and through, but I wanted to have this. This could be amazing. This could fail on its face. I don't know what's going to happen, but I wanted to tell this story because it's not often someone pulls a real Ted Lasso and tries to do this. And so Kim, following our culture from basketball for the last few years, he was an instant yes. He loves the storytelling part, and I basically told him, "You tell the story as you see it, and good or bad or otherwise, let's get it out there." And I think it's great for our elite hockey, showing what we have here in Lloydminster. We have a new $100 million arena we practice out of. We have our own team room. We have all these great things in Lloyd, and as you know, Lloyd's just viewed as that spot between Saskatoon and Edmonton on the flatlands that you just drive through, right? so, so that was the reason behind it, and I was pretty nervous last week when it started to go out and get on your guys' website. I'm not sure what the traction was on your side. Oddly enough, I gained more basketball followers than hockey followers, so I'm not sure how that happened, but
Interesting.
yeah, a ton on Instagram.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I don't I can't reference the exact statistics, but it was something in the neighborhood of like within I think before the end of the day it was released, like over 2,000 people had seen episode 1.
Right. That's
Which
that's cool.
which is like, when you look at what a niche sport hockey is and again, it could have been some basketball folks as well tuning in, but it's pretty remarkable. And I think the feedback, I don't know if anybody's reached out to you personally. I think what I've had is a lot of people have organically just been sucked in that otherwise might not pay attention. Like case in point, do you know John Morosi? He was at our conference last year, like works
Right.
in the MLB. Like
Yeah.
he retweeted it and reached out
Right.
to me like, this is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that, and those are like the cool little one-off spin-offs that are happening, right? Like some of these people that follow, I click on it, and whether it's a basketball or baseball or hockey guy, it's interesting to see who's following along, because it's a unique story. And so I thought episode 2 kind of goes into how I got let go from basketball, and we didn't really get into the weeds on how the hockey started. It was an interesting conversation over lunch hockey, which how does any job happen? It's always someone, right? So, and I'm not sure if I even told you this, Aaron,
No,
but
I was gonna be my next. That's like on my list here. Like, how did? Yeah, where was the seed planet?
uh, literally lunch hockey Wednesday, Friday. We got a great group of
And by
guys. We
lunch
play.
hockey, you mean like a bunch of adults getting together on their lunch break, going out and
Yeah.
playing
Yes.
stick and
Perfect.
puck? Yeah,
Yeah. Competitive hockey, not so competitive. You're getting hurt and you can't drink any beers after. Everyone goes back to work. It's kind of perfect, right?
yeah.
So the guy that I was playing D with, Jamie Walker, he taps me on the shoulder. He's like, "Hey, what do you think about coaching hockey?" And I was like, "Get out of here!" Like, just kind of brushed him
But
off a
do
couple
you
of
know the
times.
context of what level he's talking about at that moment?
I knew that he was the elite board chair. Like, I knew that he had just took over as the elite board chair in Lloyd for the Lancers. I didn't know anything else. And so he bugged me a couple times and he let it go. We come back next week. He's like, "So what do you think?"
What time of year is this?
It's probably like late January, early February. And he bothered me the first time and I kind of spun it off. And then he comes back the next week. He's like, "So what do you think?" And I'm like, I've never coached hockey. And he's like, "Kinger,
And are
there's
you
a
employed
ton."
by the basketball team at this point?
No, I'm fired. I got
That's how.
fired on, yeah, December 5th. I got let go, and it kind of blew up in the community.
Yeah.
So everyone knew. The community was really great. Lots of people texting and reaching out. Of course, I think I had 408 texts in the first week.
Wow.
You can't answer those. So no one said anything for a long time.
Yeah.
And then he started asking again. He's like, "What do you think?" And then he said, "Listen, we have a lot of hockey guys in Lloyd. We don't have a lot of coaches." And I was like, "Okay, fair." So I thought about it, and I think it was probably like March. I was like, "You know what? We could have a chat about it." And he's like, "Okay, come out to my shop." He owns a big pipeline. And he's like, "We'll just have a chat. You come out, ask some questions. I'll ask you some questions." I said, "Okay." So I go out to his shop. There's 10 board members all at a table. It's a full on interview.
Do you know they're all going to be there?
Nope, sandbag me. Absolutely sandbag me. So
Yeah.
I show up totally unprepared.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was getting questions like, can you even skate? Can you demo drills? What's your coaching philosophy? The regulars.
Yeah.
So I had this chat and I left. I was mad at him because he suckered me into that meeting.
Yeah.
And then within like an hour or two, I would say 4 or 5 guys I know in the community that are involved with elite hockey said, "Hey, I heard they're looking at hiring you as a coach." I'm like, how did you hear this? And he's like, "Well, they were looking at hiring you for the 15s, but everyone says you should coach 18s because you've coached college. You should coach the big team." And that's kind of how it progressed. So from there, that's how I ended up going through that process. So it was a few weeks later, and then they came back and they said, "What do you think about coaching U18s?" And I was actually in Australia. A bunch of our college girls were going on a pro tour to play a bunch of pro teams. So I got the phone call in Australia. And I would say within the first hour, I had 2 dads phone me and say, "Are you coaching hockey?" Like to have the conversation, like, "What's your coaching philosophy? What are you looking to do with the team? Like, how do you
And
want
do
to
you know
play?"
these dads at all, or are they just like they got your number from somebody and they're like, "Hey, I want
I,
to."
I know the dad. Yeah, one of the dads I know well. His son's on our team now, but he was playing out of town at the time. And he's a longtime coach, and he grilled me, rightfully so. Um, I think the conversation went well because his son's on the team and one of our up and coming youngsters. But yeah, so it all kind of snowballed from there, and it was all just one of those situations that right time, right place. And I was going to say no until I phoned a family friend of ours, Carter Banks. He was like a longtime
Oh
captain of the
yeah.
Utica Comets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Great guy. And
Yeah.
2 years prior, I had a conversation at Christmas in Cranbrook with him about leadership. And I spent probably the whole night trying to convince him, "Carter, you need to be coaching hockey. Like, you're a coach, you're a coach's kid, you're a teacher's kid. We have the same background." And he's like, "You know what? In a few years, maybe." He gave me this whole thing. So he was the first guy I called. And I said, "Carter, tell me why I shouldn't coach hockey. Like, tell me all the reasons why. You're a hockey guy. I'm a basketball guy. Tell me why." He comes back. He's like, "You have to do it. This is the most awesome thing. Worst case scenario, you're going to come back a way better basketball coach. Best case scenario, you love it and you start chasing hockey." He's like, "You got to do it." So that was a conversation that kind of pushed me to think, okay, screw it. I'm gonna try it. Like, I'm gonna give this a go. So that's how I got into it, just through a few odd conversations, and now here we are into the mix now in my first year coaching ever hockey at U18 AAA.
So you have the conversation with Carter and
Yeah.
gives you that vote of confidence, but in the conversation during this time that you're having with yourself,
Yeah.
what makes you believe you can do it, and what gives you hesitancy that perhaps you can't?
Um, yeah, fair. I think just it being so different was the hesitancy. I also didn't love the fact that I wasn't recruiting my own players. I think when you recruit players from grade 10 on, you vet them pretty well. I was coming into a totally new situation with kids in the programs already. And of course, everyone has an opinion, um, which I thought was great because I hadn't cut any kid before. I
Yeah.
hadn't kept any kid before. It's totally raw. But I'm driven with a very high, I call it an FU value. And I felt like this was the biggest obstacle that I could tackle. So much different than basketball. At basketball, I had just come off of winning all the awards, winning nationals, winning the conference the last few years. Like we had kind of done everything. And I figured if I was going to try something, why not try something so out of the park? And I won't lie, the first couple practices, I'd never felt that. Like I was kind of nervous, like for a practice. And then I realized that my planning practice for basketball, you usually have 3 coaches. You're talking about it the night before. It's about an hour, 2 hours to get it ready for the next day. I'm just going into a tryout session blank, right? With how are we going to run this and stuff. So I think the first few times on the ice, I was a little bit nervous, but then once it gets going, you lose yourself in the coaching part, right? But coaching in a hockey practice is so much different than a basketball practice. You don't get the amount of feedback chances that you do in basketball. And then the same thing now that we're into games, I hate, and it's good for me, I hate the lack of control I have on the game, right? Because so many, I can be talking to our D-man about a play that just happened and we'll walk through it. That play and those players won't be in the same spot for another 15 games. Like that same play won't happen again. Whereas in basketball, that play is going to happen
So
15
true.
or 20 times a game.
Yeah.
So you're working on the same things over and over again. So it's really interesting from the coach side how I got to give up control because the players have to play, right? And it comes down to what are you doing in practice? Is it translating to a game? And I would say early, it wasn't. I think we're getting on track now. Like when you watch us play, I think our O zone and D zone support's better. Like we're structurally more sound. So that's where I'm seeing the progress. And analytically, it's showing up. It's just now we got to finish. We figured out a way to lose every game possible, whether it's penalties,
Yeah.
giving up a goal at the end of the period. Like that's a tough mindset to change with a bunch of athletes that have been in a program that are used to losing, which I'm used to. Players that have played 4 or 5 years and only lost 4 games of 180, right? Like our
Yeah.
program was so successful. So they're used to thinking we'll never lose. And these guys are thinking, oh, when's the bad thing going to happen to us? A different mindset, right?
So I always find this interesting in sport because, regardless of the level, could be, the NHL, NBA, whatever, but you'll hear coaches say things like, I need more players that have won. And, generally what they really mean is, I need players that have won at this level because you probably don't get to that level without having success at some point along the road. And I don't know the situation that you're in, if the players that you're coaching now on the U18 team have just historically always been on teams that haven't performed well.
Right.
But what is that? But I'd flip that around. There's probably basketball players that you would have recruited that you, despite maybe their team success, that you saw something within their character, purely maybe from a talent standpoint, that said, "Hey, they're going to fit in well in a winning program." Where is maybe that line, and how do you? Because I sense it can change quick.
Yeah, for sure. I think with the hockey guys, some of these guys, so first off, we returned 4 players.
Yeah,
So we're a
fine.
very young team. We
Yeah,
have 4 first years. We have 16 guys that have never played U18 AAA. So they've come from all different backgrounds. But what I found is early on, especially, there's a lot of waiting for something to happen instead of going out and doing and having that confidence. And I think it's kind of BS, the winning program, losing program. But what does happen in the winning program is you have leaders that have seen it from years before and know how to hold the team to a standard on the floor, off the floor, on the ice, off the ice. So for us, we went pretty young this year, hoping to install the culture and what we think matters to carry over for next year. The team before us won 6 games of 38, right? So they were bottom of the league. So our goal is, can we build this process? But some of these guys, yes, they've been in winning programs, but they've been at super high end prep schools that hardly lost any games and kicked the tar out of everyone because they were
yeah,
so talented. And then we
yeah,
got guys that have played. So I think it's building the resiliency, which we're starting to see come. But that goes back to the mental side of things, the emotions that control a lot of these guys at this age. We had a couple incidents this weekend. You can see guys playing really good hockey, and then they just go on tilt, one cross check to the face, and then they take a bad one, and then their next shift's bad, and you talk to them and they're just shaking, right? It's a little bit different of a calm down than a basketball player that can come sit beside me. I can talk to them for 2 minutes calmly. They're not going back out to get crushed again, right? So, yeah, the winning program thing is a tough thing, but I think you only develop those things from failure, from losing. And I am happy that we lost some of these games early because we did little things wrong and we got punished by it. And I think when you lose those games, you learn the lesson. If you win those games, you're happy that you won, and they gloss over the lesson to be learned about taking care of the puck or not taking a penalty late in the frame or whatever it is.
You mentioned the resiliency part. Outside of, a player gets punched in a scrum and they don't retaliate, what are some of the other signals that you look for that a player or team is developing resiliency?
Yeah, I think the team talk is a big thing, and we can see it coming with our group. So we got down 3 goals this weekend. Earlier in the year, we got down 1 or 2 goals. It is crickets on our bench.
Yeah.
No one's saying anything, or guys are pointing fingers, which is the worst version of it that you can get. So we got down 3, and guys are like, "Hey, let's go. We're controlling play. Let's go." Like, it was a lot of positive talk, and I could tell that they're building a little bit of a backbone here. They've been in this before, like they've been able to fight back, and I think those are things that kind of check the boxes, and the guys are still playing hard, and especially, if we're losing a game, let's say 4-2, and to see them playing hard at the end of the game as hard as they did at the beginning of the game, it's showing they're fighting through the adversity or the resiliency. But once again, lots of these guys just haven't faced enough of that at this age, and I was a little unprepared for that, to be honest, coming in.
When we met in at TCS Live in Ann Arbor, a couple of things occurred to me. One was that um, bringing your best to the table as a coach, regardless of the sport, was really important to you. Like, this was your
Yeah.
craft, your life work, and that really resonated with me because I like to think I'm the same. And it was regardless of what level you're at, it was just you just wanted to do a good job. But you're dealing with players that, you know, have aspirations to go on and play junior hockey, maybe get a scholarship, maybe play pro hockey one day, maybe play in the NHL. Um, what were the conversations like, perhaps early in the recruiting process, to say, "Hey, I've never developed a player for the next level in this sport. This is why you can trust your career or put your trust in me, that I'm going to help you get better, and I'm going to do the things I need to do personally to ensure that I can serve you as a coach."
Yeah, so those are very tough conversations, as you
Yeah,
can imagine. I would say hockey parents compared to basketball parents. Hockey in Canada, I think everyone has an opinion. Everyone is somewhat of an expert. So
yeah,
having that conversation with kids at this age, 15, 16, 17, you're also having it with the parent.
100%.
So I can only be authentic to who I am. I can't tell them I'm going to be a great hockey coach because I haven't done it yet. But I talked about the culture and my belief system. And I think that was one of the really important pieces. And I think in episode 1, Kim shows me talking to the parents, kind of what we're asking for in our ID camp. And I think that was probably a big moment, just showing how prepared and how detailed the presentation was in terms of what we're looking for and what our expectation is. I think as a coach, you always lose yourself when you're not true to yourself. And so I have to be true to that process. The recruiting kids part, it was tricky. There's no way around it. And we probably lost a couple kids in the mix because they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to stay at a prep school," or whatever it
Sure.
is. I think the kids, though, just like any athlete, you got to build trust in them, and you can see it. It's like putting money in a piggy bank, all the interactions with the kids and
Yeah.
knowing that you're there for them. Because we do have some kids, we have some future pro kids, and we have some future WHL and junior A guys. And so my job, as I told them, is like, we'll measure success not just on wins and losses, but do they get better? Are they becoming better humans? And if we do a great job, whether we finish first or last, a handful of our guys are playing juniors next year, and they're going to be able to be resilient enough to, when you move up from the U18 AAA star to the fourth line winger in junior A, figure out how to make an impact on that team. So yeah, it was harder than my first year coaching college basketball. I was 24 years old and I was recruiting 18-year-old females. That was a really tough sell to parents, to let them send their daughter to this guy that's never coached basketball before, fresh out of university. Like it reminded me of that. It was just a frustrating conversation, but at least I had the experience of being authentic to who I was. And I think that's at this level, I'm used to the professional coaching, right? I'm used to having two assistant coaches all the time. Now I have two assistant coaches who are assigned to me. They're great, but they might not make practice, or they're not at ID camp, or they got other jobs. And I'm used to having, that group of people that this is it. And for me, I'm treating it the same way. I'm treating this as a full-time job because I have to make up hours and hours on all these other coaches. So me and coming across you guys, you and DJ, like that was me in my research process. And that's my every morning once I get up before the kids are up, is doing more and more and more so I can keep adding hours to gain ground on all these guys that have coached or played forever at a high level.
Well, I don't know if I've shared this with you kind of leading up to this project, but what really compelled me, and what I hope the outcome of this series is I'll have conversations, could be friends of mine, or just, people I meet at a party, on an airplane, whatever. And we get talking about sports and they learn what I do. And they'll say something like, I've always thought about coaching, but I never played. Or there's the but. And I look at them and I learn what they're maybe doing in their 9 to 5 life. And I'm like you could totally coach.
Right.
Like you'd be fine. Like you'll know the human side, you'll know how to organize people, like
Right.
all these things, and you can learn the rest of that, or you can go hire a skating coach, or you can go bring somebody in that has a specialty in, a particular area. And I think it's really important, we talk about, just the culture of youth sports, particularly our sport, hockey, that I think we could really benefit from getting people outside of the arena to come in. And and part of that is because it's becoming harder to coach, I think, in youth hockey. And I'm sure
Yes,
you're living that a little bit now, like just the amount of, I think, I would imagine that the pressure you've been under sometimes walking through the lobby at the end of a game is equal to, and sometimes greater than, what you would have faced in college basketball.
I think so. I think I also have a preconceived notion that everyone's got an opinion already. Um, so the nice thing about this level is if parents want to talk to me, they got to go through the manager, which hasn't happened yet. So that's a good thing. But after the game, yeah, I leave looking down quite often. You don't know if it's a friendly interaction or if it's a, why didn't you switch the power play? Why didn't you switch your PK? One of those type of things. But the pressure is high, for sure. But that's kind of what I signed up for. I didn't sign up for doing something I knew and had done at a high level for a very long time. I signed up for something totally different. And I think these athletes are very sheltered right now with their parents, and including agents and advisors. That's also not helping these athletes, I would say. It's personal opinion only. So
No, I would absolutely, I would side with you on that one. That's not doing anybody
yeah,
any good. And I can confirm, and I know this probably doesn't get said out loud a lot. There's some players, a very small percentage of players that um, might need representation because they're
for sure.
legitimate NHL prospects. Beyond that, I can confirm that I have yet to talk to a coach, and I talked to quite a few of them, that says, "Gosh, I just love it when these agents call me with
Right.
recommendation," despite the fact that I have the internet and I know people too. And it's, finding players is not the problem. But we
Yeah,
can, that's my soapbox comment for today. Um, when you talk about the evaluations, and I find this is really interesting, and I think it's one of the aspects that, regardless of what level you're at, when you're in a training camp or in an evaluation setting, and you've got your coaching staff together, you might have members of your board, or depending on what level you're at, but you got a room full of people that, to some degree or another, are knowledgeable about the game and players. And then a player comes up, and if you got 10 people in the room, you might have 10 different opinions. They all just watch the exact same game, but they form different opinions. What do you think you brought to the table, or what did your lens offer you that maybe might have got missed if all you had seen was hockey your whole career?
Yeah, I guess I looked at it a little bit differently, similar how I recruit athletes on the basketball side. I was watching warm-ups, like are they interacting with guys when they come to the bench? How are they on the bench? How are they when we're doing team activities, like if we're doing running and stuff like that? Like, are they being good teammates or good humans? That's a big chunk of it. Now, obviously, certain players at this level are going to be so talented that you have to take them on your team, right? Whereas, like at college, you could be the most talented person, and I don't have to take you because you could wreck my team. So I spent a lot of time in our tryout process, especially from up top, just watching the body language, which is hard with cages on, I will say, because you don't. So the first few times I got on the ice, we actually, I think after our second skate, I released the kid after being on the ice because I kind of got a vibe of like, this is wrecking the atmosphere in practice, which when you're looking from up top in the stands, you don't pick up on that, right? So um, I think I bring that, and I think maybe thinking outside the box a little bit in terms of if something goes bad or we try something totally different, I don't care. Like I don't care if the coaching staff thinks it's going to work and the guys think it's going to work. Great, let's try it. But yeah, I think that looking at the chemistry part was a big part for me in the trial process, and knowing that we wanted to build. Hence why we took so many younger guys. Hopefully, I'm coaching this team next year, and hopefully we have 10 returners instead of 4. Right, that would be a perfect scenario for us.
When you took over Lakeland College,
Yep.
my understanding is that program was not flourishing, and you wrap up with an undefeated season, coach of the year. You've won a national championship, and as you said earlier, I mean, you've kind of, not to pump your tires too much, but you kind of checked all the boxes at that level. What when you kind of walk into this rebuilding process, what are maybe some of the ingredients that you say, hey, like this is going to be really important to do from the onset to set us up for success down the road?
Yeah, I think two things I pointed out to the board, I guess, in the process is one, continuing to work on the things that show up the most in the game. I think that's a big thing for any team that's successful is they just put in more time. And we became very successful on the basketball side of just getting more reps, doing things more at a higher level. Now in hockey, I can't get extra ice time. I only have my ice time. I could, bring players in for skills whenever I wanted in the gym, and you could do all those things. So that was the number one thing. The number two thing I think was building it off the ice, spending a lot of time with the team building process, which we did in preseason. But what I see, like we were on the bus ride home, and the boys had, not to sell it the boys, but they had a singing contest on the way home,
Amazing.
which was
Is that
just
is
a
that in the
fun.
doc?
They told us we couldn't, Kim. I think we couldn't film anything because it was
Yeah, that's fair. That's
they
fair.
were they were embarrassed about the singing, but that's when Kim said, he's like, it's coming together. The team building part is a big part. And you could see it early on. We have a group of really, really nice kids. We're maybe missing a guy that could be a bit of a jerk on the ice, maybe here or there, or a verbal guy, but they're really good kids. And now they're starting to figure out how they can express themselves a little bit more. But when I hear the banter in the room, on the bus, like they love being together. And despite our early problems winning games, they're still in it together. And that tells me we're building it the right way, because you could easily break apart. And talking to the veterans last year, by this time, they were having fist fights and yelling matches in the room. So I think those are the two things that I really focused on is doing things over and over again that are repetitive, that create success, and then building that off the ice so that we can experience success on the ice.
So I never watched you coach basketball, but I do know I love March Madness, and one of the things that I can't help but like just get hyper focused on a March Madness is the coaches in college basketball on the sidelines, and I believe it exists in the pros too, just maybe not to the same extent. And I went just because we're down in Michigan. I've been to a couple of basketball games down there, and again, I just watched the coaches the entire time. is the up and down, calling out the plays. Like they might as well have a video game controller in their
Yes.
hands. Like, you've got Dan Hurley, who looks like, he
Heart
should be
attack. Heart
sponsored by
attack.
like aspirin. Yeah, exactly. How have you, I don't know if that was you in college basketball, but how have you, because, and I bring it up because you mentioned that, the one thing in hockey is you can't control everything. There's just these series of events that may or may not happen ever again, or at least in that season. But how would you describe yourself on the bench in games, and have you had to adjust at all?
Yeah, I think as I got older, my players that stayed with me over time said that I became softer and softer and quieter and quieter. I think you realize as you get older, especially in basketball, the players have to play, right? They have to be able to problem solve all the
Yeah.
time. Same as hockey, right? So we did have really good leadership, but I got quieter and quieter. And I would say I was probably the hardest on our athletes after wins, not after losses. And we won a lot the last few years. On the hockey side, because of the fragile egos sometimes, I find I'm given a lot more like, hey, great shift, good job getting the puck in deep, way to get the blue line, little touch points, which the guys, I just had a survey with the guys, and that's one of the things that they love is little touch points after their shifts. To me, it seems a lot to get feedback after all your shifts, but they really value it. So it's just like little positivity. I wasn't a yeller screamer. I would get mad in basketball, but it was only appropriate. But when you coach for a long time in one level or one league, I probably had like a really long string with the refs in terms of what I could say to them, the conversations I could have compared to when I was a young coach where they would just give me teas all over the place because I had no experience or reputation. And now in hockey, I'm finding the same thing. It's interesting because I can't speak to the officials. It's only on the penalty, but sometimes they'll come over and sometimes they won't. And
Yeah.
sometimes you got two refs and one of them you can have a good conversation like, hey, I just want this to be consistent. You got to make sure you're getting it both ways. And then the other ref is just on tilt, like yelling back at you. And you're like, what is happening here, right?
Oh
So
my God.
it's a different dynamic because I don't get as many touch points as I do in basketball because you could kind of set up a call for later in the game by reminding them, right? So hockey side, I would say I'm fairly quiet on the bench. I'm giving them a little bit of feedback, and it depends. Our D coach wasn't here this weekend, so I was running the D. I really like that because I feel like I'm more engaged with the matchups and switching the pairings and stuff. And our forward coach has been there all the time. So it's all a learning process. And for me, it's just like putting all these, as I said, like pennies in the bank of like, okay, that was my experience today running the D. Now this is my experience running the forwards. Now when I'm in the middle, I'm kind of yelling to both of them, hey, that line's going, this line's going. So it's a little bit different, but I don't get to yell or make a scene or anything like that. I haven't yet. So we'll see what happens.
Well, hopefully Kim's allowed to have the cameras on when that happens. Um, from a technical lens, so I sense that you know last year, I'll give you an example. I don't watch a ton of basketball,
Right.
but last year I was down in Minnesota and I took Mike McMillan, who's the coach in chief for USA Hockey, to an NBA game, and I believe it was his first ever like NBA game, and he's lived in Minnesota his whole life. So, and we've got these great seats. Shout out Ryan Blank, who hooked us up.
Yes. The legend.
Yeah, the legend. And so we've got these great seats. We're like 10 rows up, half court, and totally different sport watching it from that perspective than on TV. And I'm watching the play unfold, and we start having this conversation about how I'm like, this is where hockey's going. Hockey's going to a place where it's not about the left defenseman does this and the right defenseman, the center only does this. It's going to be some interchangeable parts. And I'm watching basketball, and I don't have enough. If I watched the basketball game with you, I'd just be chattering the whole time and have so many questions. But I'm like, I haven't figured out the rhyme or reason of how these switches happen and the changes. And I've geeked out a little bit where I'm like, from my perception is that the Golden State Warriors had a lot to do with that and just how they built their team. And it wasn't about, this player has to be this tall, etc. But my point is this is what is translated from a technical or strategic standpoint from basketball that you brought to hockey that's maybe new?
Yeah, I think a lot translates. I think it's a lot of advantage disadvantage. The 3-on-2, the 2-on-1. On the basketball side of things, the game definitely has changed, but you're always hunting matchups and you're creating the longest closeout possible to create either the most highest value shot or a closeout that you can attack. So for me, I have to flip it. Well, the highest value shot is any shot in the home plate. And this has been a struggle with our boys because early on, they just love to get shots up from anywhere, like near the blue line outside, which is the lowest value shot in hockey. So how we've shifted practice lately is a lot of how can we run 3-on-2s, 4-on-3s in zone to try to get more shots in home plate area, the high value hockey shots, right? So that's the biggest thing. The matchup control piece in basketball. Like when I watch basketball, my wife was a very, very good basketball player. She hates it because I'm like, oh, they're running this. Like they're going to look for this action. I can't, I struggle to watch it as a fan because I'm watching the actions and how the players are. I've started to switch that in hockey. I notice now I'm watching, oh, do you see Florida's forecheck? Did you see them use a middle bumper on the neutral zone? Like now I'm totally on the hockey side of things,
Yeah.
that I'm not watching for fun of watching the Oilers. I'm watching to see how bad their D zone breakdowns are.
Oh man, lots to dissect there.
Yeah, but I think the small sided advantage, I think where basketball was ahead of hockey
Yeah.
was advantages, 0-second advantage and 1-second advantages. When I came over to hockey, I was pleasantly surprised at how much it had changed since I played, in the 90s. The coaching style is way different. The coaches are way more modern. I love how it's taught. I do struggle with an hour 15 of practice because I
Why?
feel like
Bit too much?
well, I'm used to about 2 hours.
Really?
So you could hammer out, we could start on our defensive principles. We could do some transition. We could work half court offense. Whereas let's say we do a warm up drill, passing, whatever we do, we might be doing some regroup stuff. We might be doing something else. And like most practices, I find we go a little bit over. And then I'm like, oh, shoot, we didn't cover our D zone on low to high stuff. We didn't cover any roll stuff, like all of those type of things. So I find in hockey, especially only having 4 practices a week, that there's certain things that you just are lightly brushing on. And I think at this level, you got to hit on it all the time. It's got to stay fresh in their head. Like at college, I could leave something for a week and come back to it. It feels like at this level, you got to brush lightly. All right, break out for 10 minutes. Let's touch on it with 2 forecheckers or 3 forecheckers. Whereas I look up and I'm at an hour and I'm like, oh, shoot, I got 15 minutes left and we're out of here. But the intensity is cranked up. Like that's the cool thing about hockey is it is so high intensity. It's just the struggle of going, Kimmy, what's going on with this doorbell? DoorDash guy. He's a DoorDash guy. The struggle of going in zone, working on stuff in zone below the blue line to getting out to transition, going back and forth. Because at our level, we have to work on in zone a lot. And for me as a coach, I find that if we're adding in the transition or our breakout out of it,
Yeah.
the focus shifts to the breakout instead of our in zone play. Because what do the boys want to do? They want to get up the ice and score instead of
100%.
focus on where's our stick placement in the D zone, where's our like puck support, those type of things.
If I said, hey, you can call up an NHL coach and you got 60 minutes with them and you can pick their brain on a particular topic tactically or systems wise, what would the area be?
Well, we haven't scored a power play goal in the last 7 games.
Oh, man.
So
Okay.
structurally, I think we're doing things well and we're putting in the right constraints. So it'd probably be something like that. But Cooper would be the one I would want to talk to, just because I feel
Jon
like,
Cooper.
yeah, I would like to talk to him because he probably has something more similar to my storyline in terms of where it's at. But
Interesting. Yeah, I never thought about that. It's a great call out.
yeah, people keep bringing him up to me all the time. They're like, it happens, guys that didn't play or whatever. So I would love to chat with him. I think watching our junior team before our practice. So I play lunch hockey. I'll eat my lunch in the stands and watch our junior team. And I think it gives validation of we're doing some things right. Maybe there's certain things we need to work on more. Um, but it's interesting to watch all those practices to see, okay, the step up, how are they building? Okay, we're similar, but we got to fix our pace or our intensity or those type of things. But yeah, Jon Cooper would be my pick, just to pick brain. And I'm one of those guys. When I was coaching basketball, I would go to as many coaches and sit in, watch practice, take notes, ask them as many questions. I was a big believer in sharing. Going back to the basketball side, I don't think there's as many differences in hockey. Like in basketball, there's so many styles of play.
That's
Whereas like
interesting.
the hockey teams, at least in our league, they all play very similar in terms of zone entry and in zone. Like it's pretty similar. Like some teams are 2-1-2 forecheck, some are 1-2-2, some are skinny, but it's fairly similar. Whereas like in basketball, you could play a slow down team that's big and slow and they're pounding it inside. You can play a team that's super quick and it's pressing you all over. Like you're going to face a different series of problems. And it seems like there's more like play, in my opinion, at this level at least. Tell me I'm wrong here.
No, I was gonna say I think you're dead on. I think it's pervasive at all levels of the game. I think it changes a little bit when you go across the pond.
Right.
Like if we go to the World Championships every year and you watch that hockey, and you're like, okay, this is definitely
Different.
different. What surprises me the most about hockey is if I think football's a really good example, and I can relate it to that better than basketball. Whereas, if you were playing a team or if you were in a league and it's like, hey, everybody's running the ball, everybody's defense is set up to stop the run. Well, it's like, okay, well, we'll throw it. Like to use the Bill Belichick, theory. It's like just make them play left-handed. And I look at our sport and it's like, hey, in the 90s, the New Jersey Devils said, hey, we're going to sit back and trap. And then, and people could argue, the merits of that or the style of play, but it's like, yeah, everybody was doing, these guys just said, hey, we're going to throw something at them that they've never seen before and let them see if they can figure it out. I'm surprised that whether it's coming up with new ideas or new ways of playing or recycling an old idea tactically, that doesn't happen anymore in hockey, because it does seem that like we've been doing this long enough. The coaches side, I could say whoever wins the Stanley Cup in 2 years, that's going to be what everybody does.
Right. They're going to style of play is going to follow. Right.
100%. Yeah. And I think that exists in our sport in a lot of areas where it's very much, sometimes people are, or coaches are hesitant to stand out.
Now, juniors, I would think that that's maybe where you see some difference because you're recruiting those athletes. It's kind of the end of the road before university. Like U18 AAA, we're trying to get these kids ready for the next level, right? It's like a stepping stone level. So me personally, it'd be crazy for me to start doing something totally different that could mess up their trajectory. But I could see in junior, if you're going to have that team for a couple of years, that would make sense to me, right? Or NHL, like this is how we're going to play, slightly different. It's going to be a little bit trickier to play against. And you're right, everyone would copy it instantly. And in 2 years, something else comes up.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think there's stylistically, like, I think it's funny. Like it amazes me sometimes, like just even for the show, like when I'll generally pull up a team's roster. So if I'm talking to the coach and just to get a feel for how they're built, and I'll use the Western Hockey League as an example. When you just
Right.
look at the height and weight of the players today on most rosters compared to 15, 20 years ago, it's like they ran out of milk in the last 15 years. They
Right.
stopped growing, right? They're just it used to be like you could, it was the theory is like there's not a snowball's chance in hell you can play in that league if you're under 6 foot unless you were just ridiculously talented. And now there's teams where they might have on a 24 player roster like half a dozen players over 6 foot. Maybe that's a bit of a
Right.
stretch, but it's
Right.
the look of the play. And I think it's just um I think what has happened, and you touched on it with basketball, with the amount of you could pull players into that individual skill development. I think in a lot of other sports, um, the granularity of breaking down skills has been along for a long time, and so those
Right.
skilled plays were always there. I think we've just started to adopt that in hockey, where now players they have skating coaches, they have stick handling coaches from a young age, and I think what we're recognizing is that we used to think it was all about brawn and size, and I think we've just proven to ourselves it's actually about, can you make a play?
Yeah, no, I think you're right on that. Like I see our guys are very skilled. And obviously you can tell the kids that are our Western League kids because their projectable tools are just that much higher, whether it's size or speed, especially, I would say. One of the things that I think in terms of seeing these kids, and I've asked a few parents, they skate all year. They have skate coaches, skills coaches, everything. Like they go all year. I think that there's been a little lost with the shinny generation disappearing. Like when I grew up, Sundays, if you got to go on the ice for shinny and you got to play with the big kids, you better be in the right spot. You better pass the puck. And if you did, they were going to be awesome to you. But if you couldn't pass or you hogged it, they would not pass it back to you. And you had to figure out how to go into spaces and stuff. And I don't think there's a lot of like creative free play in hockey. Like I don't ever see kids playing shinny at the rink ever, like on open ice slots.
I think it's so interesting you brought that up. It's just through the lens of recognizing sort of that social hierarchy that educates kids. Because I
Right.
agree with you, the shinny part's gone, but I think that's really interesting how your mind went to, I had to, because otherwise the big kids would have just said buzz off or they wouldn't pass to me, and that's how you learn. Like I look at that with my own son, like and he's done some development stuff. The best development my son has been going to public skating, and they carton off kind of the top the circles down at one end, and they give the kids plastic. They can't use wooden sticks, but they just get to play shinny. It's whoever shows up. And when he was 4 years old, he was out there, and I was like, at the start, it was like he's just learning how to not to get run over. But that was the best development he's ever had. Was just having us thrown him in the deep end, so to speak.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. And I think that, we see it even in all sports, the creative play. Like that's where you have to figure things out in a safe environment. So a lot of our guys are really good on cones, but in games when the dynamic changes, those skills go away. And you can see the frustration because they're so good at it in a practice and it doesn't necessarily translate. You have to do it 100 times in practice before you can do it once in a game. And it might not work that one time, right? You got to figure out the time and place, when to toe drag or when to do whatever, cut back on it. So yeah, that would be my observation I've seen with kids so far. That in the video, I'm surprised they don't watch more team video. Like I should have known.
Like
Just
team
their
video, like they
shifts.
don't watch it on their
Just
own, or you guys don't do
no,
a lot of video.
no. We do video, but lots of them don't. Like they watch. Some of them watch their shifts only because they get huddle in stat. They get it sent right.
Yeah.
They get their shifts. But I showed this week the first 8 minutes of the second period, and I was like, okay, guys, here's what we're gonna do. At any point, speak up if you see something you're out of position or something you want to talk about. I play the first minute. No one says
No way. How
nothing.
did that go? So just to be clear,
It was
this is fascinating. Like, so you
yeah,
say, "Hey, we're just going to let the tape run," and
yeah,
you guys call it out when you are out of position.
yeah. And
Okay.
so it's going first minute. There's like 5 or 6 there. It's hockey. The guys are. It's not perfect, right? So there's a bunch of things I'm looking at. I'm like, okay, no one's saying anything. And then one of our first years, he's like, "Oh, stop it. I think I should have been closer to the puck there. Like I think I was too far." I'm like, "Great. What else?" And then all of a sudden, our D man's like, "Actually, I was way too far away." So then they start talking. So then we're playing. Yeah. So then we're playing it and stopping it. So they're starting to talk. So, and I usually like to keep the film short because their attention span is short, but we actually went for 20 minutes. I think we got through 6 minutes of real time film. And I was like, how many of you guys watched this second period? Because we got scored on twice, but then we controlled the rest of the second period. No one raised their hand. I'm like, how many watched their shifts in the second period? I had like half the guys. They just don't watch it. So I had been asking the kids to make edits so they break into groups. And on Wednesday, let's say your group, Aaron, you guys got to bring 4 or 5 clips now of our team, power play, penalty kill, and then you got to bring something from the NHL that you saw that was cool or something that we work on in practice. So we're trying to get them more involved with it, but it is a little bit pulling teeth. And for the first minute of awkward silence, I thought, oh, this is going to go sideways. But then they started to speak up. So we'll be doing that more often because I don't think they watch full tape because if I show them 10 clips of our entries, those are the only 10 entries they've seen. So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
that
Yeah.
is interesting. Um, how different is it coaching boys versus girls?
Well, I've coached U18 boys in baseball, and I coach U18 boys in basketball. The basketball boys I've had since they've been in grade 6. So that's a little unfair because they're probably molded a little bit. Uh, I was surprised. Well, once again, I was a male. I shouldn't have been surprised. The emotions were way wilder than I thought. I'm going to give my girls a ton of credit. Way less emotions, I would say, than boys at this age. I think it's all over the map. I think some of that's pressure. Um, I think socially, this generation a bit, it's a little bit of a struggle. Like for them to come and ask me, I was shocked that when I have my door open and when I give them time, come in, bring any clips you want. Like they're just now, what are we? We're December. Like they're just now starting to bring me clips, but like they wouldn't after a basketball game with girls. Girls are so detail orientated, right? So they'll bring in 90 clips that are irrelevant, and there's probably only 3 or 4, but they want to know exactly what to do all the time. And boys, they struggle with the feedback part. Like it's a real sandwich, the positive, negative, positive. It's like you're doubling down on the positive before you hit one negative and then doubling the positive. So now with boys, there's a lot of juice at that age, and that's a lot of fun, right? Like they can really get after it. I enjoy the testosterone that them getting amped up in practice. That's a lot of fun. But yeah, you forget they're in high school. Like I forget they're in high school. I'm used to dealing with athletes that are finishing their careers or about to turn pro or play for a national team, and these guys are just on their hockey journey, right? So it's been a lot of fun going back to that age. I will say my wife doesn't love it as much. I brought the boys over to carve pumpkins at our house, and they came
What a
over
cool
and
idea.
yeah, so they all came over, and I did this all the time with my girls for basketball. So we'd have a pumpkin carving contest. So they all come in our house, 20 instead of 14. And my wife sneaks out to the living room and she's crying. And I'm like, why are you crying? She's like, it's just so different. It's not girls because we have 2 daughters and a son, and our daughters obviously loved having the girls over. And the boys were super polite, but they're boys, right? Like all of a sudden it's done. I got 2 guys wrestling on the couch. I got another guy like it just they're being boys. And she's
Yeah.
like, I'm not ready for this much male in our house. So that's been a little bit of an interest change. But now, my kids are excited to like see them at the rink because now they're becoming the new role models in their life. So yeah, it's been a cool change to go to boys all the time. I get since this doc started coming out, I have had so many players reach out and be like, I can't wait to see this. I hope you're as tough on them as you are on us and
No
all of
way.
this stuff. Yeah. So a lot of the girls are like really pumped and sent really nice messages and stuff. So that's been cool. But yeah, it's boys is different. A to B is how I describe boys and girls. So if you tell girls to go A to B, they will only go A to B. They will never vary from that. They lack creativity in general. Boys, A to B, they might not ever get to B because they're just going to do their own thing. So girls lack the creativity, boys have the creativity, but lack the structure is how I would compare those two from coaching them for many years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I haven't had that much experience, but two that really stand out. Years ago, I had an opportunity to go to Team BC, the U18 team, and being on the ice with them. And I can remember that like the whistle blew to come into the board, and like they just immediately all came in, eye contact, on one knee, not a peep, listen. Like in a boys' practice, I'm like they fire a few more pucks, they cross check their buddy, they chirp each other a little bit, like. And I was like, and I remember afterwards, I'm like, is this no, like, is this because they're trying out? Like, is this a facade? They're like, no, that's just, they're like, that's girls. Like, they're just in attention to detail. The other part I found is the social aspect. And granted, these are young kids, but I know on my son's team, there's 3 girls, and we're in U9, so we're trying to sell kids on playing defense, and in some cases, we trying to help these kids. Hey, this might be a good spot for you down the road. And there's this girl, Camila, who's a really strong skater. She's a bigger kid, and I'm like, Camila, like you. been doing this for a while. Like, you look like a defenseman. I think you could be great. Like, just pumping her tires. And for any other player, it would have just been like, yeah, I'll play, do whatever you want. Like, you just told me I was awesome. I finished my little spiel and she's like, are any of the other girls playing defense? Like, all she cared about was the social aspect. And so I've had, that conversation with
Yeah.
other coaches, and they're like, yeah, that's normal. They're like, that's the way it's been described to me. They're like, when you have boys, they're like, their eyes is like, I just want to be on the first line.
Yep.
And I don't want to be on the fourth line. They're like, with girls, they're like, I just want to play with my friends. I really don't care what situations that's in. I just want to play with my pals. I don't know if that resonates with you at all.
No, 100% it does. And to that point, it makes me think a lot about the trust factor with girls and boys. Girls are easy to trust right away. They will believe any coach and believe anything. But if you lose a girl's trust, you're not getting it back. Like, it is very, very hard to get it back. And what I've seen so far with boys is a longer build up for the belief process. It takes a lot longer to crack that shell. But then once you have them, they're there. Like, they're committed. Like, you could have a little bump in the road and they're not going to lose their trust right away. It's a little bit different build. But yeah, girls, the social aspect is very important. And that's why I think in our program, we took so much time into the culture, because we had some really good leaders, but they didn't realize that you couldn't be an alpha on the court and yell at your teammates without leaving the court and explaining why, or having a coffee and having that interaction off the court, because we had a couple that would just get after girls all the time. And then it would make our dynamic weird. Whereas, like, boys, if I got after you in practice, you'd be like, what an ass. And then it's done. Tomorrow it's not a big deal. You're back at it. So I think it's interesting to figure out how to make those bonds. And the leaders that I've had that have been great, they have three things. Perfect leader is the hardest worker, right? The best player, the best connector of the team. That's a perfect leader. If you have a pretty good one, there are two of those three things. And if there are one or two of those, you got to find other people that can fill those gaps in. And I think with boys, especially the team I'm coaching, we're needing multiple individuals to fill those roles. But I think that's part of the male-female dynamic, is figuring out how to be that social on the ice, off the ice, because it's totally different. Because once it gets on the ice, for guys, it gets quite heated because it is super physical. Basketball's physical, but you're not cross-checking someone or slashing them in practice where you're going to have a fight and then go in the shower with the same guy one after another, right? So, yeah, it's interesting.
You touched on earlier about, you grow through adversity. Makes perfect sense. You've also had a perfect season with the team in basketball. In that scenario, do you have to manufacture the adversity, or how do you help your team grow without that, that tool at your disposal?
Yeah, we got pretty good at manufacturing. I won't lie. We actually had 3 undefeated seasons, just so you know.
Yeah.
Just making sure you know. No, so we're Division 2 essentially in Canada, CCAA. We would play the top Division 1 teams. So University of Alberta, U of R, U of S, U of L. We would play them in preseason to get absolutely kicked. When we were really good, we would beat half of the university teams the year that we won national. Yeah, so we beat U of R. We played really close with U of A. We beat Mount Royal. Like, we were close with U of C. So we could hang with those higher end teams when we were really good. When we're bad, they beat us by 50, 60, 70. But what I loved about those games is that was our September, October. And when you play a team that's that much better than you, it really shows your flaws. And what I didn't like when we had strong teams is when we played college teams, we could get away with bad habits. We could do things that wouldn't show up on the score sheet. We'd win by 15 or 20. So we had to figure out a way to play competition outside of our league schedule that was above us, that showed the things that we were going to have exposed to us in nationals, right? When you get to the biggest tournament of the year, all your flaws come out. And so that was one of the things that we had to do in our program, is figure out how to do that and then manufacture our practices so that it was at such a high level. Even if that weekend's games weren't good, we were getting that competition during the week, if that makes sense. So it's hard to motivate when you know you're going to go into a game and win by 25. It's very hard. And it becomes hard to coach when I'm preaching, hey, we got to get the rebound. We got to make sure we're boxing out. And they're like, we're up 45, coach. Like, it's hard to stay
Yeah.
on them in that sense, right? It's easier in a close game. So that's a little bit of a struggle. And once again, such a great process for me to go through that for multiple years. And now I'm on the flip side of it, that it feels like we're doing things right and we just can't catch a break. And I
Yeah.
look up and see a 3-2 loss or a 4-3 loss on an empty netter or whatever it is, right? So it's a totally different mindset. But I think you got to find internal motivation. I think a good coach can motivate their team
Yeah.
internally. And I was never afraid of motivating my group with something external or something that wasn't the initial if they needed it.
Why didn't Chris King go coach another basketball team? You had the resume.
Um, Before or after I
Well,
got
after
fired?
after you were fired,
Yeah.
and I mean,
Yep.
case in point, I mean, I look at what's happening, in college sports now. Like in another environment, like you would hit the market, and there would be no shortage of suitors. Like I can't imagine there weren't opportunities.
Yeah, I can't speak to that for sure. I did have a couple inquiries with jobs, and they told me that I wouldn't be a candidate. My firing was it made national news here in Canada, and it was quite well viewed. I think podcasts and other things, none of which I was on, of course, but I think there was such speculation that no one will touch me. I was told no one will touch me until my court case is done. In previous years, there was lots of offers most summers. Like as soon as the season ended, there was a lot of conversations. And I'm from Kitscoty, just down the road from Lloyd. My parents are there. We got 3 young kids. My wife even works at the school still that fired me, which is tough on her, obviously. But we didn't want to leave the community. We didn't think that we should have to uproot our family and leave the community. So this hockey thing worked out fantastic. Obviously, now being removed, I don't know what my future holds, if I am moving to coach hockey or if basketball comes back, but I think we're more open to the thought of moving. I coached there for 17 years, 16 years. I played there. So I was assistant coach. So it's 20 years of my life. It was one of those things that I just thought, okay, I'll coach another 17, I'll retire and that'll be it. And I'll coach at Lakeland for my life. It didn't work out that way. And maybe sometimes that's a sign of you're destined to do other things. And so here I am doing other things.
Chris, last one. You are, effectively, you haven't quite hit the halfway point of the first season. When you started on this journey, human nature would suggest that you'd have a vision of where you would be. And my question would be, how does where you're at today compare to where you had hoped or where you thought was realistic and where you would be? And moving forward with the rest of the year, what's the thing that you you didn't think you need to know, but now you're like, hey, we really got to focus on this?
Yeah, good call. I think we're a few games off where I thought we would be. I was
Yeah.
hoping we'd be in the mix. I knew we would be slow starting because we're very young.
I've
Um,
stared at your standings, by the way. Like,
yeah.
I'll come give your kids a pep talk. Like, you guys are not out of this. Like, I've done the math. And your goal differential in particular compared to last year's team, like you've made huge strides. So
Yes, and it's showing. Like I went through the analytics this morning. Like I said, the last 5 games we're leading in chances. We're a little bit unlucky. We've had some bad breaks, but that's hockey. That's the way it goes. I suspect we're going to get better in January, February with us being young, and you can see it's there. We need a little bit of luck, but I think the consistency is the key for our teams. I think these top teams are very consistent. They're getting very solid goaltending night in, night out. We kind of have a health scare with one of our goalies. So he's been missing for a little bit. So our backup he's been playing great. He's been giving us a shot to win these games. But my successful season in my mind was us making playoffs. I think if we can make playoffs in this first year and give us a shot to play anyone, I think that we will be peaking it. And really, it's just about getting into playoffs. Every year that I coach, it doesn't matter. As long as you get into playoffs, it's about who peaks at the right time. I was well aware we would not be the best team in October, November. I was sure of that. I would have loved a couple more W's, but that's the way it goes. And I think it's created some hunger in our guys. So I'm hoping playoffs. That's where I hope we'll be. And I think that'd be a huge step for our program moving forward.
For anybody that hasn't tuned in yet, like it is great theater, and it's, obviously we're not, there's a little bit of delay on what's happened with the program and what we see in the series, but just following your team, like I can't wait to see, how this development shows up. And like I said, I believe that your group is setting itself up for a bit of a dramatic and really compelling finish. And I think, just again, I'll say this again. I think that you're doing a great service to youth sports by demonstrating that, you don't have to dunk a basketball to coach basketball. If you've got a passion, if you're good with people, if you want to help young people be the best versions of themselves, like, get in the arena. There's a place for you. So thank you.
I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on, and obviously the platform to tell this story. Hopefully it continues to be great theater for everyone. And I really appreciate it.